Hi, I'm Stuart. Welcome to my channel. In this video I'm going to give my reading wrap up for the week of September 15 through September 21. I completed 3 books this week, so I'm going to give reviews for those books. I read parts of 2 books this week, so I'm going to talk briefly about those 2 books. I'm going to talk about some reading events I'm taking part in. I'm going to talk about a Wobble I'm working on. I'm going to talk about Lego set I'm working on, and I'll talk about some other things that are taking part in my life. The first book I completed this week is The Woman in Me by Britney Spears. And before I talk about the book, I'm going to give a brief author bio, which is from the back of the book. Multi-platinum, Grammy Award-winning pop icon Britney Spears is one of the most successful and celebrated entertainers in music history, with more than 100 million records sold worldwide. In 2021, she was named one of Time magazine's 100 most influential people. Spears' album Blacko was added to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's Library and Archives in 2012. She lives in Los Angeles, California. In this memoir, Britney Spears talks about her dysfunctional family. Her father was abused by his father. He in turn was abusive. She talks about her youth. She talks about her early times in the entertainment industry. She talks about becoming a star. She talks about the conservatorship, where her father was a conservator. She talks about the predatory people in the entertainment industry. She talks about the media and how they treated her. Her father, her mother, her sister Jamie Lynn, Justin Timberlake, Kevin Federline, an ex-husband of hers, none of them come off very well in this book. She talks about the recording of some of her music, and she talks about some of her tours. This book was difficult to read at times, especially when she talked about the conservatorship. I recommend this book to anyone who wants to read Britney's side of the events of her life. Just be warned, it's not an easy book to read, especially when she gets to the conservatorship. It becomes especially difficult then. Next, I'm going to read a short passage from the book. One thing that brought me solace and hope during the time when I was in Vegas was teaching dance to kids at a studio once a month, and I loved it. I taught a group of 40 kids. Then back in LA, not far from my house, I taught once every 2 months. That was one of the most fun things in my life. It was nice to be in a room with kids who had no judgment. In the conservatorship, people were always judging everything I did. The joy and trust of kids the age of the ones I taught, between 5 and 12, is contagious. The energy is so sweet. They want to learn. I find it 100% healing to be around children. One thing I kind of admit probably doesn't reflect well on me. I kind of wanted Britney to take a hard line when she was released from the conservatorship and she basically separated herself from her family, but she did take the high road, which is much to her credit. She just got along with her life and tried to get back to living a normal life. As normal a life as a really famous person can live. I rated the book 4 stars. The next book I want to talk about is William Shakespeare's Cymbeline, Unabridged. Before I talk about the book, I'm going to give an author bio, and it's not really a brief one, but he did have an impressive career, so it's kind of a long bio. It's from the back of the book. William Shakespeare is generally acknowledged as the greatest dramatist in the history of English literature. Also a poet and actor, Shakespeare was born in Stratford-upon-Avon, where he received an education at the local grammar school. Whether he attended any educational institution subsequent to his early tutelage is unknown. By 18, Shakespeare was married to an already pregnant Anne Hathaway. The couple would go on to have 3 children, Susanna and the twins Hamnet and Judith. Hamnet died at 11 years old. Shakespeare moved to London soon after the birth of the twins and began publishing poems. Venus and Adonais, 1953, The Rape of Lucretia, 1594, and joined the Lord Chamberlain's Men as an actor and playwright. Shakespeare stayed with the Lord Chamberlain's Men throughout his career, producing some of his finest work. King Lear, Macbeth, and The Tempest among them. After the company fell under the patronage of King James I and became the King's Men. During his career, Shakespeare penned 38 plays, 2 narrative poems, and over 150 sonnets. Enjoyed considerable financial success, eventually buying New Place, one of the largest homes in Stratford. Following his death in 1616, at the age of 52, 62 of his plays were collected and published as the first folio, and his entire canon, including his extant plays, sonnets, and poems, were published as the complete works of William Shakespeare. Shakespeare's plays are the most produced dramatic works in existence. They have been translated and adapted into countless stage, screen, and television productions over the years. Entire theaters are devoted to producing his works. His writings are studied and analyzing literature classics around the world. I should say, too, I read this play as part of Shakestember, which is an event that is co-hosted by Callie at Books I'm Not Reading. I'm not sure I would have read a Shakespeare play otherwise. This is the first Shakespeare play I read since high school, so it's been a long time. The story is set at a time when Rome was in power. Cymbeline is the king of England at that time. He has a daughter named Imogen. His daughter Imogen married Posthumus. He doesn't like the fact that his daughter married him. So he banishes Posthumus, and he sort of places Imogen under house arrest, although it doesn't seem like there's a lot of security with that. But the queen was a widow when she married the king, and she has a son by the name of Cloten, and that son is the one that the king wants Imogen to marry. The story goes from there. There are palace intrigues, there is tension with Rome, there is treachery. I believe that the version I read is the original version. As such, I didn't always understand the Old English. And when I first started reading it, I wasn't sure I was going to be able to understand anything, but when I settled in and accepted there was some of it I wasn't going to be able to understand, I just read it and tried not to reread stuff too much, although I reread stuff more than I normally would. I'm not willing to study something. I'm not willing to put effort into trying to figure out, look online for certain passages and what their meaning is and stuff like that. It's just not an effort I'm willing to do. If a person is a Shakespeare aficionado, then I would certainly suggest they should read this play. For others, I would say that I would only suggest you read this play if you're like me and are willing to read something but accept that you're not going to understand everything and not get bogged down to it. Or if you're willing to put in the work and you do search up the meaning of certain passages that you may not understand. I only suggest for those people maybe read it. I will say I did find it worth reading. I rated it at 4 stars. I don't think that I'm going to read another Shakespeare play till next year's Shakestember, but I am glad I read this, and I do feel a sort of sense of accomplishment that I have done it. As I said, I haven't read Shakespeare since high school. That was a long time ago. That was The Merchant of Venice. That's the only one I know we read. I think we probably read Romeo and Juliet. It seems very likely, but as I'm not sure, I can't claim I read it. Next, I'm going to read a short passage from the book so you get the idea of the writing style. And this is right from the beginning of the book. Scene 1, Britain. The garden of Cymbeline's palace. Enter 2 gentlemen. First gentleman. You do not meet a man but frowns. Our bloods no more obey the heavens and our courtiers, still seen as does the king's. Second gentleman. What's the matter? First gentleman. His daughter and the heir of his kingdom, who he purposed to his wife's sole son, a widow that lady married, hath referred herself unto a poor but worthy gentleman. So that was just the beginning of an example. I was a little concerned with that beginning of the book. There's a little more to that too before I started understanding some of it. I rated the book 4 stars. And the final book that I want to talk about that I completed this week is The Murder at the Vicarage by Agatha Christie. I got the idea of reading this book from a recent video by Pat at Book Chat with Pat 8668. She's a big Miss Marple fan, and I had never read Miss Marple. I read a fair amount of Poirot books, more in my youth than recently, but I did read a fair amount of them. But I never read a Miss Marple book, so this was the first one, so I decided to read it. Before I read the book, I'm going to read an author bio, and like Shakespeare's, it's not a short one, but she did have a very successful career too, so it's warranted. Agatha Christie is the most widely published author of all time in any language, outsold only by the Bible and Shakespeare. Her books have sold more than 1 billion copies in English, another billion in 100 foreign languages. She is the author of 80 crime novels and short story collections, 19 plays, 2 memoirs, and 6 novels written under the name Wery Mescatot. She first tried her hand at detective fiction while working at a hospital dispensary during World War I, creating the now legendary Hercule Poirot with her debut novel, The Mysterious Affair of Styles. With The Murder in the Vicarage, published in 1930, she introduced another beloved sleuth, Miss Jane Marple. Additional series characters include the husband and wife crime-fighting team of Tommy and Tuppence Beresford, private investigator Parker Pine, and Scotland Yard detective Superintendent Battle Inspector Japp. Many of Christie's novels and short stories were adapted into plays, films, and television series. The Mousetrap, her most famous play of all, opened in 1952 and is the longest-running play in history. Among her best-known film adaptations are Murder on the Orient Express, 1974, and Death on the Nile, 1978, with Albert Finney and Peter Ustinov playing Hercule Poirot respectively. On the small screen, Poirot has been most memorably portrayed by David Suchet and Miss Marple by Joan Hickson and subsequently Geraldine McEwen and Julia Mackenzie. Christie was first married to Archibald Christie and then to archaeologist Sir Max Mallowan, whom she accompanied on exhibitions to countries that would also serve as a setting for many other novels. In 1971, she achieved one of Britain's highest honors when she was made a Dame of the British Empire. She died in 1976 at the age of 85. Her 120th anniversary was celebrated around the world in 2010. As I said, this is the first Miss Marple mystery I've read. The story is actually told in the first person by Vicar Len Clement, and that threw me at first. I had to reread the first page or so. Kind of expected things were going to be told from the POV of Miss Marple. The story is set in a small English town in the 1930s. Could have been the late 1920s, actually. The book was published in 1930. I suppose it doesn't particularly matter. This is the kind of small town where everybody is in everybody else's business. Early in the book, a murder is committed. As the title says, it occurs in the vicarage. The remainder of the book is the vicar, local law enforcement, and Miss Marple trying to solve the mystery. I found the solution to the mystery very satisfying. I found the book tense. I didn't like too many of the characters. I found that many of them kind of unlikable. Many have very rather harsh opinions of the other town residents. And in many cases, that would cause me not to enjoy the book, but in this case, I did quite enjoy it. I recommend this book to anyone who wants to read a mystery with a clever solution set in a small English town around 1930. My only proviso would be that, as I said, I found many of the characters unlikable. So if that's an issue for you, this book might not be for you. And as I said, that frequently is an issue for me. That was one of the problems I had with the last Poirot book I read, Halloween Party. It was a similar small town, and the residents, I just didn't like them. For some reason, in this book, that wasn't an issue for me. I did quite enjoy it. As I said, many of the characters are very judgmental, and I found them unlikable. The one thing I'm not sure about is whether succeeding Miss Marple books are told from her POV. I did like this POV after I got used to it, but I kind of would like to see Miss Marple as more the focus of the story, as opposed to a supporting character, which is what she was here. I rated the book 4 stars. Now I'm just going to read a short passage from the book so you can get an idea of the writing style. And this is just from the beginning of chapter 1. It's difficult to know quite where to begin the story, but I fixed my choice on a certain Wednesday at luncheon at the Vicarage. The conversation, though in the main irrelevant to the matter at hand, yet contained one or two suggestive incidents which influenced later developments. I had just finished carving some boiled beef, remarkably tough by the way, and on resuming my seat I remarked, in a spirit most unbecoming to my cloth, that anyone who murdered Colonel Prothero would be doing the world at large a service. One book I started to read this week is Mrs. Nash's Ashes by Sarah Adler. I got the idea of this book from a video, or it might have been more than one video, of Tia Chu. I read a fair amount of this book. This book is a grumpy sunshine relationship. The grumpy part of this is Hollis, and the sunshine part is Millicent. They are trying to fly out of an airport in Washington, D.C. They had known each other slightly because Hollis was a friend of Millicent's ex-boyfriend, Josh. But what happens is there's a nationwide computer outage and lots of flights are grounded, so they have to find an alternate to get to Florida, and they end up traveling with one another. The story goes from there, but I am quite enjoying it. I'm the majority of the way through. I do have to return it though by tomorrow morning to Libby, so I likely won't finish it, and I probably will have to wait a little while after I put a second hold on it because it's a popular book. The second book is The Middle Ages, A Graphic History by Eleanor Janega. I've been reading that book a while, but it's not taking me a long time because I'm not finding it interesting. It's just not a priority. The first 4 books I mentioned in this video were all books that I borrowed from Libby and Hoopla. So those were books that I try to make my priority because I got deadlines on them. And I don't with a medieval history. But it is interesting. I expect I'll have it completed next week and have a review for it. There is one book that I got this week, and that is The Murder of Roger Ackroyd by Agatha Christie. It's a book I learned about in a recent video by Nix at Nix Reads, who's a huge Agatha Christie fan. Agatha Christie's their favorite author, so I read a Miss Marple book, and I'll be reading this book very soon, so I get it back to Libby in time. Well, they automatically take it back, but I hope to complete it and not do what I've been doing a lot of, which is reading a book partly and have to return it and then wait a while to get it back again to complete it. Next, I want to talk about a few reading events I'm involved with. The first is a live signing I viewed on YouTube. On Premier Collectibles, I ordered a copy of Over the Influence by Joanna Jojo Levesque. And she's a singer who, when she was in early teens, had a good amount of fame and had some hits. So, had a couple of albums that did well, and then her record company buried her. And she was able to extricate herself from that, but it's going to be an interesting book to read. It sounds like that she's not sparing herself of blame for things that went on in her life. So I'm looking forward to read it. I don't have the book yet, but in the live event, she signed copies of her book and she answered questions, both audience questions. And she was with the editor of the book, so it was kind of interesting, maybe about 35 minutes. Although I'm done with Agatha, I still go in and look at posts on the Fable Book Club I'm With the Band, moderated by MJ, and the Agatha group read on Voxer. to see other people's comments and maybe comment back or just like or have an emoji response. I fell behind on Tia Chu's book club, moderated by Tia Chu. We're reading The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. By the end of today, we're supposed to have read the 5th and 6th chapters of the book. The book actually has 7 maxi chapters. It's almost 500 pages, so a chapter is considerable. But because of the other books that I've been reading, trying to get them done because I have deadlines, I have to catch up on The God of the Woods. I am liking it. Hard book to read at points, but I needed to get to read some of these other books because of the deadlines. And as I mentioned, I'm taking part in Shakespeare, which is a event. One of the co-hosts is Kelly at Books I'm Not Reading. I'm not sure if I can qualify by the one book I read, but it is something, and I wouldn't have read it if not for Shakespeare. There is a Halloween event I'm going to take part in. It is the Spooky Scary Skeleton 2024 Halloween Readathon. It was created by Nicole at Nicole's Bookish Nook. I learned about it from a video by John at DisquietandDragons -LH3ZM. John's one of the co-hosts of this event. It is a pretty relaxed group of requirements. It's not very rigid, and that's the kind of event I like. I am going to, by the end of this month, do a video where I decide what books I'm going to try to read for the event. If history serves, I might not make them all in October, but it is an event I'm looking forward to. I do love Halloween. I do love horror. Lead up to Halloween, I just like that, seeing people's decorations on their lawns. I just enjoy that. Saw a recent video by Cliff at Cliff's Dark Gems. Video was called Selection of Spooky, Horrific October Readathons, Perfect for Fall. And in this video, he lists maybe 10, 12 Halloween Readathons, one of which was Nicole's actually. And I do want to go back to his video because there was one particularly I was interested in. He also gave a shout out to, it says huge shout out to Paige at Pages with Paige. Sounds like she does this type of thing all the time. Comes up with horror-related readathons. So both those things, if you like Halloween, like horror, people might want to look into. See if you want to take part, or see from Cliff, see if there's some events that he talks about you might want to take part in. Next, I want to talk briefly about the Wobble I'm working on. It's Bjorn the Narwhal. This is where I am so far. Added the fins, added the horn, and I've done the parts. These are the parts of the tail, and these got to be sewn together and sewn on the body. And I think I'll be done. It'll probably happen today. If it is, I will take a photo and include it after this little segment. Next, I'm just going to show a short video of the Lego set I've been working on, the Himeji Castle, which is a real-life castle in Japan. I made some progress on the Lego set, so I'm just kind of going to zoom in a little bit, and you can kind of see. I'm a little more than halfway done with it. And a little bit at this angle so you can see what it looks like at this angle. Past week I listened to music from Midori and Marie Vaunt on Tidal. Midori is a classical violinist, probably the only classical artist that I would currently listen to, I think. It's just not something I gravitate to that much. And Marie Vaunt is a DJ, electronic EDM DJ. Listen to both of them on Tidal. Besides that, I went to Stay True Body Piercing. The ball on the lower part of my eyebrow piercing came out, so I tried to attach it myself. I was unable to, so I went there to get them to do it. And while I was there, I figured I might as well get another piercing done. So I had an industrial piercing done, a vertical industrial. I don't know if you can see it. I may from this. If not, I will insert a. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get the angle so it can be seen. If not, I'll just take a photo of it and insert it. But if you can see it, it's like vertical here. There's a green gem in the center of it. I can't have the typical industrial up here because there's a ridge in my ear. So this was something that the piercer I go to, Joe, came up with. So happy I got it. It was considerably more painful than any of my other piercings, and there is 2 holes to it too. But it is a cool one to get. He says they don't do many of these, so it's kind of cool to have something that's relatively rare. Other than that, as typical for me, I watch some WNBA games, watch lots of YouTube videos, mostly booktuber videos. I did record the segments for my next music video, which is going to be my 90s music and concerts from the 90s, the pop music one. I edited some of it, so hopefully I can finish editing and get that one out soon. And there's some tags that I'm going to do. I did the Beauty and Books tag, which I released this past Wednesday. I'd be interested to know how your reading week went. If you'd like to let me know, please reply in the comments. Music or other things also, if you'd like to let me know. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, please subscribe, please hit the bell to get notified when I upload future videos. I hope you have a wonderful reading week, and I hope you have a wonderful week in general.